While Greece waned, across the Italian plains rose a new power. Rome. Born of legend Romulus, slaying Remus Rome, first struggled, then conquered. Against Carthage, Rome faced its greatest test. The Carthaginian general Hannibal marched elephants across the Alps, crushing Roman armies. Yet Rome endured, adapted, struck back. At Zama 202 BCE, Scipio Africanus defeated Hannibal, ending Carthage's empire. Now Rome ruled the Mediterranean. It absorbed Greece, spread Latin, built roads, aqueducts, law, and legions. The world was no longer a patchwork of tribes and cities. It was becoming a single empire. Meanwhile, across the sea, another power stirred. In a small village in the Macedonian sun, a king was born. The villagers called him Ptolemy. But his name would echo through history as Alexander the Great. His father, King Philip, forged Macedonia into an army machine. When he died, Alexander took over. With a massive army at his command, Alexander set out to conquer the Persian Empire. He smashed Darius's forces at the Granicus River, seized Asia Minor, then turned south. At Issus, he faced the mightiest army in the east. Darius threw everything against Alexander: 6,000 chariots, 10,000 horsemen, 50,000 infantry. But Alexander's phalanx, armed with long spears and moving as one, broke through. Darius fled, leaving his family behind. Alexander seized Tyre, then Egypt, then the Persian heartland. He rolled up the royal family like a Maccabean scroll and cast them aside. One by one, he seized the Persian satrapies until his empire stretched from Greece to India. Everywhere he went, he spread Greek culture, founded cities, made trade routes safe, set up schools, and most important of all, he waged war. Warring was in Alexander's blood. He loved it. Now he had the biggest army in the world. But Alexander wasn't done. He wanted more. So he marched south, aiming for the warm waters of the Arabian Sea. There, according to legend, the one-horned Persian monster came out of the waves to challenge him. Some say Alexander killed it, some say he tamed it. Either way, his quest brought him no closer to finding the ocean's end, so he turned back to the west. While crossing the desert, his men grew sick with malaria. Soon after, Alexander was dead, probably of malaria too. As he lay dying, his empire began to fall apart. His generals carved the realm into pieces. Kingdoms fell to local rulers, Greek cities were sacked, and stability collapsed. But before that, something remarkable happened. Alexander's widow, Roxana, gave birth to a son. They named him Alexander too. And when he grew up, he inherited his father's empire and his mother's looks. Young Alexander looked like his father, the great king, and he acted like him too, like his father. He was a warrior. He campaigned in Persia, Central Asia, and Arabia. Like his father, he spread Greek culture wherever he went. In fact, it was Alexander II who built the great city of Alexandria in Egypt. Like his father, Alexander II was a conqueror. He expanded his realm to include Arabia and Mesopotamia. He even fought the Indian king Porus on the banks of the Beas River. There he won a great victory, but it was costly. His army was shattered. So he returned home, ending his reign as conqueror of the world. By now, Rome was ready to seize control of the Mediterranean. It sent out fleets to patrol the Western Sea. Then, in 146 BCE, it crushed Carthage forever. Now, Rome dominated the Mediterranean. It was the biggest, wealthiest city in the world. Its population was about 1 million. In the 3rd century BCE, only two empires rivaled Rome: the Seleucids in the east and the Ptolemaic kingdom in Egypt. Both were Hellenistic, both were weak. Meanwhile, China was growing stronger. The warring states were over. The Qin dynasty had risen. It built huge armies. It dug canals. It standardized weights and measures. But its biggest achievement was unifying China. Its king took the title of emperor. He modeled his realm on the mythical Middle Kingdom. He declared all other lands barbarians. But even as Qin unified China, the Han dynasty replaced it. The Han emperors were scholar kings. They wrote about their travels around the empire. They wrote about their dreams for the future. They wrote about their past. One emperor commissioned an enormous tomb. It took 8 years to build. Inside, he placed life-sized figures, each one different, along with real gold and silver. After he died, the whole tomb was sealed up. It became the home of the second emperor, and so it stayed for 2,000 years. Now it was becoming harder and harder to live in the old ways. As empires grew, so did their armies. Soon they needed professional soldiers. Greek hoplites, Roman legionaries, Chinese crossbowmen, Indian chariots, Persian cavalrymen, Punic mercenaries. All these warriors and more battled across 3 continents. They were pawns of the empires, tools of war. But they also changed warfare. They fought in larger groups, took on bigger armies, used better weapons. Above all, they developed new battle tactics. Suddenly, battles involved maneuvers, strategy, logistics, surprise. In other words, modern warfare was born. But not everyone wanted to fight. Across the northern seas, the Germanic peoples lived in small tribes. They raided along the coasts of the Mediterranean. Their kings were local chieftains. Their soldiers were part-time warriors. Most were farmers. That is, until one man. He was a chieftain of a small tribe in southern Germany. His name was Arminius, and he led the Germanic peoples to victory against the Roman legions at the Teutoburg Forest. It was one of Rome's greatest defeats. It left the empire vulnerable to raids along its northern borders. For the rest of its long life, Rome would never recover its lost prestige in the north. Meanwhile, Germanic tribes kept coming south. They pillaged the provinces, disrupted trade, harassed the frontier, but they were disorganized, ununited. They weren't ready to build an empire. Rome was. The rolling hills of Judea have a story to tell. A story that began one night when the heavens opened and a star shone brighter than all the others. It was a star that led men of the east to a stable where an ox stood over a manger. And there cradled in those hay-strewn walls was a babe swaddled in strips of cloth, a child born not of kingship, but of carpentry. His name was Jesus of Nazareth. His message was not one of empire or military might, but of love, of forgiveness, of turning the other cheek and treating others as you would like to be treated. He spoke of a kingdom, yes, but not one of this world. He was crucified, nailed to a cross between 2 thieves, his followers scattered and afraid. But the seed of his message took root and spread. Carried by his apostles across the far reaches of the Roman Empire, the message of love and salvation endured. Persecuted and scorned though they were, the followers of Jesus multiplied. And centuries later, Christianity, once a small sect looked upon as a dangerous and scandalous cult, would transform the world. But our story doesn't end there. For 600 years before the birth of Jesus in the cold stone halls of a church in Rome, another story began. A story of a prophet called Muhammad who lived in the deserts of Arabia. One night as he was praying, the course of his life and the course of history shifted. For he heard the voice that spoke to him, guiding him, instructing him, revealing the path for all of humanity. Over the next 23 years, these revelations continued until finally they were compiled into a single book. The Quran. Like the followers of Jesus before him, Muhammad faced persecution for his new and radical ideas. But the message of Islam spread from Mecca to Medina and beyond. With astonishing speed, vast lands were united under one God, one community, one faith. And so we come to the crossroads of human history. 2 great faiths, 2 great stories, 2 paths to the divine. One born in the heart of the Roman Empire, the other in the deserts of Arabia. 2 prophets with radically different messages, yet both carried by a handful of men to every corner of the earth. Today, billions of people around the world trace their spiritual lineage back to these 2 men, Jesus and Muhammad. 2 names that have echoed through the ages, 2 figures who have inspired, divided, healed, and persecuted, whose legacies continue to shape our world today. But what if I told you there's much more to their stories? What if I told you there are connections, links in their narratives that go far beyond what you may have imagined? Join me now as we delve deeper into the narratives of these 2 pivotal figures from Jesus in Judea to Muhammad in Arabia. We will explore the echoes of their stories, the shared threads in their journeys, and the profound impact each has had on shaping our world. Along the way, we'll uncover surprising parallels and hidden connections that reveal a tapestry of history far richer than we ever imagined. What did Jesus and Muhammad have in common? They were both born in humble circumstances. Jesus in a stable, Muhammad in a cave. Both were persecuted for their beliefs. Jesus was crucified. Muhammad's followers faced hostility. Yet both attracted devoted followers. Their teachings spread despite attempts to suppress them. And both remained central figures in faiths followed by billions, shaping ethical, spiritual, and societal norms for countless people across the world. But what sets them apart? Jesus, part of the Judeo-Christian tradition, is believed by Christians to be the Son of God. The Messiah prophesied in the Hebrew Bible. His teachings emphasized love, forgiveness, and turning the other cheek. Muhammad, the prophet of Islam, is revered by Muslims as the final prophet of God, bringing the message of submission to God's will. His teachings, as revealed in the Quran, focus on 5 pillars of Islam, including faith, prayer, charity, fasting during Ramadan, and pilgrimage to Mecca. Despite their differences, both figures stand as beacons of faith, influencing billions and shaping ethical, spiritual, and societal norms for countless people across the world. Which one do you think is more influential? Why? Which message resonates with you more? Feel free to share your thoughts below. Your comments are valuable and contribute to an engaging discussion. And here in the Americas, new empires would rise in Mesoamerica. First the Maya, and then the Aztecs, until the Spanish arrived to conquer them both. Meanwhile in Africa, trading kingdoms thrived, sending gold south to the Swahili city-states and silver north to the kingdoms of Song and Mali. But no empire is eternal. It's the Nubian, the kingdom of Kush, or ask the great city of Carthage raised by Rome. Or ask the Moors, who ruled Iberia for 8 long centuries until Ferdinand and Isabella expelled them. By 1492, it seemed the world had turned Christian. But beyond Europe, Islam still held sway from the cataracts of Egypt to the walls of Constantinople. For the 3 great monotheisms had come into conflict over the Holy Land and would soon go to war over it. We interrupt this history lesson to inform you that today we are launching our own history channel. After all, you clicked on a video about world history? What did you expect? Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, which let's be honest, you probably are, it's not actually a separate channel, just this one, but on the app it will show up as its own channel. This means your subscription feed will have the best of our videos in one place. But more importantly, because it's technically a new channel, you can subscribe to it on the app. And I know what you're thinking. Why would I want to do that? How about a free book every week for a year? All subscribers will get 1 free book a week for the next year through our app. And they're not old books like the Iliad or the Quran. They're modern books written by popular history authors like Dan Carlin, Angus Constam, Brian Kilmeade, and so many more. It's the best way to read nonfiction. Because you do and even need to leave the app to read these books. You can start reading right away on any device you have. There are thousands of titles available and you can download them instantly. We update the selection weekly, and there are no ads or distractions. And if you finish a book quickly, just return to the app and pick out another one. It's the perfect way to support us too. In fact, if enough people subscribe, we might even hire more historians. So what are you waiting for? Go to the app and subscribe to the History Channel today. Now back to your regularly scheduled program. And then everything changed when the Mongols rode into Europe in the mid-13th century. If you've watched this series before, you know their story. First under Genghis Khan, then his grandson Kublai Khan. The Mongols built the largest contiguous land-based empire the world had ever known, stretching from the Pacific to Eastern Europe. But the Mongol Empire was made up of many different peoples, and its borders were porous. And when the Black Death arrived in the 14th century, nobody knows exactly where it came from, but everyone suffered from it. This plague killed millions of people across Afro-Eurasia, and it devastated the Mongol Empire, contributing greatly to its eventual decline and fall. The West slowly emerged from the plague-ridden 14th century and entered the Renaissance, a rebirth of classical learning in Italy that spread northward. The printing press arrived from Germany, and Martin Luther nailed his theses to the Wittenberg church door, sparking the Protestant Reformation. Soon Europe was embroiled in a series of wars as kings and princes fought to assert their dominance over the Holy Roman Empire. Meanwhile, the Ottoman Turks seized Constantinople in 1453 and began their conquest of the Mediterranean. But it was a new world that would truly change everything. In 1492, Christopher Columbus reached the Americas, and soon the Portuguese and the Spanish had colonized vast territories. Europeans began to enslave the natives or import Africans as slaves instead. And as the riches of the New World flowed into European coffers, the continent grew wealthy and powerful. By the 17th century, colonial rivalries between Spain, Portugal, France, and Britain escalated into a series of wars that reshaped the world. As the Dutch, Portuguese, and British traded spices, cotton, and silks, African slaves became incredibly valuable, especially after the introduction of the triangular trade. In 1687, the English philosopher Isaac Newton published his philosophy, Naturalis Principia Mathematica, laying the foundations for modern physics. During the Enlightenment of the 18th century, reason and science took center stage in intellectual circles, and many nations underwent revolutions. Citizens demanded greater participation in government. The American Revolution began in 1776 and ended with the United States victorious and independent. Soon thereafter, the French Revolution erupted. Napoleon Bonaparte rose to power in France and spread revolutionary ideals across Europe. And then the Industrial Revolution began in Great Britain and spread across Europe and North America. With the invention of machines like the steam engine and later the internal combustion engine, factories drew rural populations into cities. People lived in crowded conditions and worked long hours in dangerous conditions. But wealthier members of society enjoyed greater access to consumer goods and leisure time than previous generations. At the same time, the process of industrialization led to growing pains and social upheaval in many countries. In response to the harsh conditions brought on by industrialization, many workers' rights organizations formed across Europe and the United States. As the 19th century gave way to the 20th, two great conflicts would nearly destroy the world. The First World War began in 1914 and ended 4 years later with the collapse of several empires and the Treaty of Versailles, which forced Germany to take responsibility for the war and pay heavy reparations. The Russian Empire collapsed and the world's first communist state was born under Vladimir Lenin. In 1929, the U.S. stock market crashed, leading to the Great Depression, which affected the entire world. As the global economy floundered, Adolf Hitler rose to power in Germany in World War II began in 1939. The conflict lasted 6 years and ended with the unconditional surrender of the Axis powers. In 1945, 2 atomic bombs were dropped on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and Japan surrendered soon thereafter. World War II was the deadliest conflict in human history. In the aftermath, the United Nations was formed, and peace and prosperity returned to most of the world. However, conflicts continued in Korea and Vietnam. Soon, terrorist attacks in the early 21st century and the COVID-19 pandemic would challenge the world once again. Today, we stand at the precipice of a new age. Climate change, artificial intelligence, space travel, biotechnology, and globalization continue to shape our world. And now you have the tools to explore it all. You know, that's a cool map. Thank you for watching. The wheel turns. The wheel becomes a chariot wheel, and with it, a new age dawns. For in Mesopotamia, the first city-state of Uruk is born. Here, in the heart of a civilization yet to be named, humanity takes its first steps towards greatness. We find them in the Temple of the Rising Sun, men and women, their bodies bent over, turning heavy millstones to grind grain into flour. The rhythm of their labor echoing the pulse of the earth itself. Slowly but surely, these anonymous workers are creating the surplus grain that will nourish not just a village, but a city. This, in turn, allows some to specialize in other tasks, like crafting beautiful pottery or hammering away at bronze. And as the city grows, so does its need for organization. Enter Gilgamesh, 2/3 god, 1/3 man, and the first true king. Under his banner, Uruk becomes the first city-state, a beacon of culture and power in a world of scattered settlements. Yet even as we rise, shadows stir in the darkness. From the north comes a nomadic people, fierce and warlike, led by a cunning chieftain named Sargon. He has united disparate tribes under one banner, the Akkadians, and soon they too would build an empire, the first in history. Yet empires, like all things, eventually fall. And when they do, a new force rises to fill the void. A people who will shape the ancient world like no other, the Babylonians. At their core is a warrior queen, Hammurabi, who conquers all before her, bringing Mesopotamia under one rule. But her greatest legacy is the stele inscribed with 282 laws, a complete legal code that would influence the development of law for millennia. Yet even this golden age would pass, leaving behind only echoes and ruins. And from the Levant rises another kingdom, the Israelites. It's a small but mighty force who will carve their own empire into the ancient Near East, led by a succession of charismatic leaders. They not only conquer neighboring city-states, but also forge a unique covenant with their God, Yahweh. With victories on the battlefield and psalms on the lips of their people, they establish a theocracy unlike any other, where God's law guides the affairs of men. Meanwhile, on the banks of the Nile, a new kind of pharaoh has risen, Akhenaten, whose obsession with the sun god Aten would nearly topple Egypt itself. While his radical religious reforms append the old order, a new style of art emerges, celebrating a pharaoh and his family in ways never seen before. Yet when the royal heretic dies, the traditional gods are quick to make a comeback. And Egypt finds itself ruled by a new dynasty, the New Kingdom. Its most famous pharaoh is none other than Ramses II, the self-proclaimed greatest of all kings. His reign is indeed glorious, marked by military campaigns, building projects, and a near-mythical love affair with the architect Izzet, who would design his grand complex at Abu Simbel. But the greatest monument of the ancient world belongs to another, a pharaoh whose tomb would become the defining image of human ingenuity and human hubris. The pyramids of Giza. Each stone monolith tells a silent tale of sweat, toil, and devotion, while inside, a sarcophagus of unimaginable wealth awaits its occupant, the enigmatic pharaoh Khufu. But no tomb can hold back the tide of time, and Egypt would eventually succumb to outside forces. First the Persians, then Alexander the Great, and finally Rome, whose legions would march into Alexandria and set the great library ablaze. In Greece, however, a new era is dawning. Athens, once a small settlement, has grown into a cultural powerhouse, home to philosophers like Socrates, Pericles, and Plato, who will shape the course of Western thought. In the heart of the city, a tribute to Athena stands, the Parthenon, a temple unlike any other, whose frieze captures the soul of an entire civilization. Yet even as Greek culture reaches its golden age, dark clouds gather on the horizon. The mighty Persian Empire is preparing for war, and soon the Greeks will face a choice, freedom or tyranny. And so we come to Marathon, where a small band of Athenian hoplites defeats the might of the Persian hordes. Victory inspires a new sense of confidence, not just in Athens, but across the Greek world. City-states band together to form a league, a council of 300, whose purpose is to resist any future Persian invasion. But it won't be long before another threat emerges, the growing power of Macedon, led by a man named Philip II. Though initially dismissed as a barbarian, Philip is a brilliant strategist and tactician, and he soon proves it on the battlefield of Chaeronea, where his army defeats the Thebans and the elite sacred band of Thebes. With victory, Philip establishes Macedonian hegemony over the Greek world, setting the stage for a new kind of empire. Meanwhile, across the sea, Rome is changing as well. The Republic is in crisis, bogged down in a series of civil wars that threaten to tear the empire apart. But from the ashes of this conflict will come a new kind of Rome, ruled by emperors who will reshape the Mediterranean world. Augustus, the first of these, brings peace and prosperity after a century of civil war. It is during his reign that the Pax Romana begins, a period of unprecedented peace and stability throughout the empire. But even as Rome enters its golden age, trouble brews along the frontiers. Germanic tribes are pushing into Roman territory, while across the sea, a new religion is stirring, one that will challenge the very foundations of Roman society. But none of these challenges will topple Rome, not now, not ever. For this is the story of how humankind rose from the dust of ages to claim the earth and shape the destiny of tomorrow. We have been at this game of civilization for roughly 6,000 years, During that time, many things have happened. Many civilizations have risen and fallen, cities and empires, laws and pyramids and palaces. But throughout all of it, one thing has remained constant: the restless human heart. It was not enough to build stone monuments or conquer with armies. Humanity now wanted something more, something greater, answers to the eternal questions. Why do we live? Why must we suffer? What is justice? What is truth? What is the good life? And above all, what lies beyond death? It was these questions that gave birth to the great religions and philosophies, each a flame lit against the vast darkness of ignorance. Today we will look at 3 such philosophies, 3 paths to enlightenment. We'll start with the one that perhaps you are most familiar with, the one that most closely aligns with our own Hinduism. Hinduism is perhaps best described as a cluster of traditions and ideas that emerged in the Indus Valley, traditions that evolved over centuries. At its core, Hinduism is a tapestry woven from the threads of many beliefs. Some believe that at the beginning, there was only a single reality, a state of perfect peace and unity known as Brahman. Others speak of a time when the world was enveloped in darkness, and the first beings to emerge were the gods, personifications of light, warmth, and life-giving forces of nature. These deities then created the world and everything in it. Yet others tell the story of a great cosmic battle between the forces of light and darkness, good and evil, where the divine hero, the god Vishnu, was forced to take an incarnation on earth to restore balance and harmony. But regardless of which tradition you follow, most Hindus believe that the purpose of life is to realize one's true nature, to awaken to the truth that you are not the body or the mind, but a spiritual being, a spark of the divine. When you realize this, you have attained moksha, or liberation. You have stepped out of the cycle of birth and rebirth into the infinite ocean of eternal bliss. The next path leads us to the land of the rising sun, to Japan, where once upon a time a young prince heard some wandering monks debating about suffering. He invited them to his palace and asked them why it is that life is full of so much pain. The monks explained that suffering is inherent to the human condition. We suffer because we cling to the things that change, to fame and fortune, to love and life itself. But the wise man, they said, is he who does not cling, who has found peace within himself. This teaching left a deep impression on the young prince, so much so that he dedicated his life to its pursuit, eventually becoming an enlightened monk himself and giving up the pleasures of the palace for the simple life of an ascetic. His name was Siddhartha Gautama, but you probably know him better as the Buddha, the awakened one. For Buddhists, the world is not an illusion, but our perception of it is. We are born into a world of suffering, yes, but suffering is not its only truth. There is also truth in impermanence and non-self. Everything changes. Nothing is permanent. All things come to an end. And no one truly owns anything, not even their own mind. Our deepest longings, our greatest fears, our joys and sorrows, all are impermanent. They will pass like the clouds passing across the face of the sun. But this impermanence is not something to be feared. It is something to be embraced, for it is through change that we grow. It is through letting go that we find peace. It is through impermanence that we discover the truth of the self. And when we do, we attain nirvana, the extinguishing of the flames of desire and suffering. Our final path takes us to the mountains of Greece, where once again, a young man pondered the mysteries of existence. He wondered about the nature of the soul, the purpose of life, and the meaning of death. Unlike the Hindu and Buddhist philosophies, which developed gradually over a long period of time, the teachings of this man, the Greek philosopher Socrates, were the product of his own personal journey and insights. He had no scriptures to guide him, no ancient texts to quote. His was a philosophy born out of wonder, out of a deep and abiding curiosity about the world and our place in it. Socrates did not claim to have all the answers. Instead, he asked questions, probing and challenging his students to examine their beliefs and think deeply about the world around them. He taught them how to question their assumptions, to challenge their prejudices, and to seek the truth for themselves. In doing so, he laid the foundation for Western philosophy and ethics. For Socrates, the unexamined life was not worth living. To truly live, we must examine who we are, what we believe, and why we believe it. Only then can we begin to understand the nature of reality and our place in it. And thus Socrates, the Buddha, and the sages of India, 3 different paths, 3 different destinations, yet all leading to the same goal, the realization of the self, the discovery of truth, the awakening to reality. In our next episode, we will continue our exploration of world religions, looking at the Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Join us then to discover how these faiths shaped not just the course of history, but also the very fabric of human civilization. When one thinks of ancient China, images may spring to mind. The Great Wall snaking through rugged mountains, an emperor on a dragon throne, or perhaps a wise man with a long white beard. This last image is of Confucius, a philosopher whose teachings shaped Chinese civilization for 2 millennia. It all began in the tumultuous 6th century BCE, during a time known as the Spring and Autumn period. As the name suggests, this era saw the flourishing of various states and kingdoms, but also constant warfare. Men were eager for stability, for a way to create order out of chaos. And so, when a sage named Confucius, better known as Confucius, began teaching the way of life, his students flocked to him.
Ow.
There was just one problem. Confucius wasn't a warrior. In fact, he never commanded an army, nor did he carry a sword. His weapon of choice was wisdom, yet it was this very lack of martial prowess that made him unique. At a time when kingdoms competed for supremacy through military strength, Confucius dared to propose a different path to societal endurance, one based not on force, but on ritual, respect, and righteousness. His teachings were collected and compiled after his death by his disciples in a book known as the Analects. In it, we find the essence of Confucianism. One particular passage captures the heart of his philosophy. Let the ruler be a ruler, the father a father, the son a son. On first glance, this may seem like a simple statement, but in reality, it encapsulates a profound truth about human relationships. You see, Confucius advocated for hierarchy, but not tyranny. Each member of society had a duty to fulfill based on their station in life. The ruler must rule with virtue. The father must guide and provide for his family. The son must honor and respect his parents. And the student must be diligent in learning. It was only by fulfilling these roles with integrity and sincerity that one could attain harmony. Not through force, but through mutual respect and the cultivation of virtue. To put it simply, Confucianism was a way of life that emphasized personal and societal transformation through the practice of Ren and Li. Ren, often translated as humaneness or benevolence, involves treating others with kindness and empathy. Li, on the other hand, refers to ritual propriety and good manners. By adhering to these principles, individuals could cultivate harmony, not only in themselves, but also in their interactions with others. For instance, the concept of face is central to both Ren and Li. It involves upholding one's dignity and reputation, but also respecting the dignity of others. By treating everyone with respect, regardless of their social status, one could create an atmosphere of harmony and cooperation. Similarly, the practice of ancestor worship was an integral part of Confucian life. It wasn't just about appeasing the spirits of the dead, but also about acknowledging the importance of one's roots and the continuity of family and society. By honoring one's ancestors, one demonstrated respect for the past and the sacrifices of those who came before. The influence of Confucianism on Chinese civilization was profound and far-reaching. It became the dominant school of thought, shaping the values, customs, and even the legal system of Chinese society. For example, the examination system, which began in the Han Dynasty, was based on Confucian principles. Officials were selected not only for their noble birth, but also for their knowledge of Confucian classics. Moreover, Confucian ideas permeated every aspect of daily life, from family relationships to social etiquette and even artistic expression. The emphasis on harmony and balance is evident in Chinese poetry, painting, and architecture. As the centuries passed, Confucianism continued to evolve and adapt to the changing needs of Chinese society. During times of upheaval, it provided a sense of stability and continuity. When China came under the rule of various dynasties, Confucian values helped to integrate and legitimize their rule. Even when new philosophies emerged, such as Taoism and Buddhism, they often found common ground with Confucianism. And yet, despite its historical significance, Confucianism is more than just a relic of the past. Its teachings remain relevant today, offering a timeless wisdom that can guide us in our own lives. In an age of individualism and self-interest, the emphasis on community and social responsibility is a refreshing reminder of our interconnectedness. The concepts of Ren and Li provide a roadmap for cultivating empathy and practicing good manners, thereby creating a more harmonious and compassionate world. So the next time you think of ancient China, remember the humble philosopher who changed the course of history without ever wielding a sword? His name was Confucius, and his weapon was wisdom. How does a civilization last for thousands of years? You might think it needs to be perfect. Actually, no. It just needs to be resilient. So that means having a variety of ideas and systems to draw from so that when things go off track, you have a way to set them right again. And one thing we love about history is how it shows us that process of resilience building over and over. So let's do some history. Confucianism, Taoism, and legalism were three major philosophies that emerged in China during the Warring States period, roughly from 475 to 221 BCE. Now, why do we pick these three? Because their combined influence would define Chinese civilization for millennia. Each had strengths and weaknesses. Together, they provided China with a kind of philosophical toolkit to manage its people and itself. Now, let's get started. First up, Confucianism. You probably know Confucius as an ancient dude with a big white beard, serene and wise. And sure, he looked the part, but he was also a radical, even a revolutionary. Born in 551 BCE, he lived through a time when the Zhou dynasty was fading and the whole of China was descending into chaos. Warring states indeed. So when Confucius started talking about reviving the old ways, specifically the rituals and harmonies of the early Zhou, his audience, the elite class, ate it up. It was like they were getting the recipe for running a country and society back when it worked. To them, Confucius must have been like the coolest cat around, and it got better. He also taught about the ideal ruler, someone who led by example, was deeply virtuous and cultivated the right relationships. Oh, and he had this whole plan for creating a merit-based bureaucracy, which meant that if you were qualified, your social status didn't matter. Suddenly, everyone wanted to be a Confucian. Well, not everyone, but enough that his teachings became the foundation for imperial examinations. A system still influential today. Even the language of government was largely Confucian. His followers codified his teachings in a book known as the Confucian Analects, which collected his sayings, stories, and ideas. Think of it as a how-to guide for living and governing. The heart of Confucianism, though, was the concept of Ren, often translated as benevolence, righteousness, or humanity. This wasn't just being nice. Ren was about fulfilling your role in society with kindness and doing what was right, even when it was hard. Confucius believed that if everyone followed Ren, society would naturally flourish. Ah, yes, good old-fashioned goodness. Maybe that's all we need, right? Fast forward a few centuries and enter Laozi, author of the Tao Te Ching. His words were simple, poetic, mysterious. The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. Where Confucius sought order in society, Laozi sought harmony in the cosmos. We'll get to the Tao in a bit, but first, let's talk about Laozi himself. Legend has it that he was an old, perhaps even immortal, man who lived deep in the mountains, more interested in goats and fishing than ruling the world. Then one day, as he was crossing the Western Han River, he saw a boat full of children struggling against the current. So he stepped in and helped steer them back to shore. When they asked him, "Mister, how do you seem so calm in the face of that wild river?" He replied, "I don't try to conquer the river. I learn to move with it." That pretty much sums up Taoism, learning to go with the flow. For Laozi, the key to life and the universe was understanding and aligning oneself with the Tao. The way it was the natural order of the cosmos, the rhythm of the universe, everything that happened, every event, every interaction, every choice. It was like a cosmic dance, and the Tao was the music that played on. But how did you find the Tao? By letting go? Laozi was all about simplicity, humility, and spontaneity. He encouraged people to embrace the natural world, listen to its rhythms, and live in harmony with it. His teachings were like a balm for people living in a chaotic world. They offered peace, balance, and a connection to something greater than oneself. Taoism gave China not bureaucracy, but soul. Art, poetry, medicine, and a reverence for the hidden forces of the world. It was as if Laozi took a paintbrush to the canvas of life, adding splashes of color where Confucius had drawn the lines. Together, they created a richer, more vibrant picture of how to live. But not all men trusted virtue or nature. The Warring States, thinkers like Confucius declared, men are selfish. Order can only be built on strict laws and severe punishments. This doctrine, legalism, would arm the first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, who unified China in 221 BCE. Its appeal was straightforward. In a world where survival was tough, legalism promised security. It laid out clear rules and harsh punishments. If you broke the law, you paid the price. No excuses, no second chances. It was a world of black and white, of right and wrong, of reward and punishment. Legalism's influence was everywhere. It shaped laws. It influenced court decisions. It even affected how people interacted with each other. Society was now a machine, well-oiled and tightly controlled. The legalists had come for order, and by God they would get it. While some saw legalism as a threat to freedom and autonomy, others welcomed the structure and security it offered. After all, in a world of chaos, isn't stability a blessing, even if it's a bit stifling? So there you have it, Confucianism, Taoism, and legalism. 3 philosophies born from the ashes of a changing China. Each offered a different path, a different vision of how to navigate the complexities of life. Together, they formed a kind of philosophical tripod, holding up and balancing each other, defining the very soul of Chinese civilization. But remember, nothing lasts forever. Each of these philosophies had its own evolution, its own challenges, its own internal conflicts. The real story is how they adapted, how they changed, and how they survived, much like our world today. We still grapple with questions of morality, authority, and the meaning of existence. Perhaps that's why the stories of Confucius, Laozi, and the legalists resonate even today. They remind us that the journey of a civilization is much like the journey of life itself. It's full of twists and turns, challenges and triumphs, and above all, it's a constant search for balance. But now it's time for you to join the conversation. What do you admire most about these philosophies? How do they reflect the times in which they emerged? How do they continue to shape our world today? Your thoughts, insights, and even debates are the fuel that keeps this journey of discovery alive. Don't hold back. Share your thoughts in the comments section below. We're eager to hear your perspective. Also, before you go, don't forget to like and subscribe. It's a great way to show your support and keep our journey together in history. Thanks for joining us. Till next time, keep asking questions, keep seeking answers, and above all, keep embracing the never-ending adventure of learning. Look around you. What do you see? A street, a market, people going about their daily lives. But what if I were to tell you that this, too, is a temple? Not a temple made of stone or wood, but a living, breathing entity. That's what we are celebrating today, the spirit of temples. We travel all over India to find them, these ancient seats of learning, repositories of culture, those wonderful pieces of architecture that make you feel like you're entering a different world altogether. Have you ever wondered where it all began? Where did the whole idea of a temple first take root? Welcome to this series, Hindu Roots. We will trace the ancient roots of Hinduism, its customs, its traditions, its mythology, and its places. Join us each week as we discover how the eternal Dharma evolved through time. The story of the first temple goes back to the dawn of human consciousness. 2. When men first began to ponder about existence, about life and death, about the beginning and the end. From the Vedic hymns came a vision of gods and rituals, of cosmic cycles, of birth, death, and rebirth. The universe was seen as an endless wheel, samsara, where the individual soul is trapped. The priests, or brahmanas, saw the need for a way out, a way to break free from this eternal recurrence. They found that way in karma, the law of cause and effect. Every action, they said, bears fruit, good or bad. It shapes a man's next life. This, they believed, could be transcended. By doing good deeds, by living a pure life, one could break the cycle of birth and death, reach moksha, or liberation, merge with the divine, and that, they said, is salvation. These hymns, These Vedic chants, they don't just talk about the concept of moksha. They also reveal to us the names of the divine. Rudra, for instance, later became known as Shiva. In the Upanishads, he is called the supreme god, the source of creation. Vishnu too is mentioned, and so is a third deity, one without a second, called Brahman. So we have Rudra, Vishnu, and Brahman. These three formed the basis of the early Hindu trinity, and there were many more. Gods and goddesses like Indra, the king of heaven, Agni, the fire god, and a host of others. Each had a specific duty, each had a specific mantra. It was during the Vedic period that the foundation of the Vedic way of life was laid. The system of 4 ashrams, the stages of life, brahmachari ashram, then the names given to the various stages of life. The duties of a student, a teacher, a householder, and finally the ascetic. Then there were the 6 schools of philosophy, the 6 darshanas. All of these formed part of the Vedic way of life. And where was this way of life practiced? In the open air, under the open sky. There were no temples, not at least in the modern sense, but there were sacred spaces. Every village had one, a place where people would gather to perform their rituals, to chant their prayers. It was here that the Vedic tradition was kept alive. It was here that the Vedic texts were recited and memorized. In course of time, these open-air assemblies became more permanent. They were enclosed, roofed, and beautified. Still, they were far from the towering structures that we associate with temples today. That distinction belongs to the next period, the period of the epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. It is believed that the first true temple was built during this time. It was built by a man called Miyasuda. He was the architect of the gods, so to say. He designed and built magnificent palaces for them. One such palace was built for Kubera, the god of wealth. It was called the Maya Seba, or the Assembly Hall of Maya. It was here that the gods held their court. Can you imagine anything more divine than that? The gods holding court in a magnificent hall? But then came the Buddhists and the Jains. They too wanted a place to practice their faiths. They built viharas and derisers. And though they may not have been as ornate, they played an equally important role in spreading their faiths. Then came the age of temple building. The rulers of the Deccan, the Cholas, and the Pandyas built massive temples, enduring symbols of faith. They had high gopurams to welcome you, long corridors to lead you inside, and a vimana to crown it all. Some temples had tanks, some had living quarters for priests, others had intricate carvings depicting scenes from Hindu epics. The Brihadiswar temple in Thanjavur, built by Raja Chola in the 10th century, is a marvel even today. No wonder it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And then came the Indo-Saraceni style of temple building. It blended the best of both worlds, Indian motifs with Islamic arches and domes. The result was spectacular. The most famous example is the Char Minar of Hyderabad. Today there are close to 2 million temples in India. They come in all shapes, sizes, and forms, but they all follow a simple formula. They all face east to welcome the rising sun. They all have a sanctum sanctorum to house the deity. And they all have a story to tell. They're witnesses to our civilization, repositories of our culture, and above all, seats of our faith. They remind us of the eternal dharma of our duties, our rituals, our myths and legends. They are the living, breathing embodiment of Sanatana Dharma. So the next time you visit a temple, look beyond the deity. Look at the towering gopuram, the intricate carvings, the colorful paintings. For in every temple, whether it is made of wood or brick or stone or even human settlements, you can experience the journey of Hinduism through time. You can almost touch the ancient roots of Bharata Dharma. That's all for now. Till next time, take care. Jai Hind. In the beginning, there was nothing but water. Then the earth emerged, dry land, mountains, forests, flowers, herbs. Next came the animals. First single-celled organisms, then fish, birds, insects, reptiles, mammals, and finally humans. They lived in tribes with no cities or kings. It was an idyllic time until one day a change rippled through the human race. A new emotion appeared, dissatisfaction. Some wanted more food, others more power or wealth. And so, the long journey began. The search for more, which led to war and slavery, kingdoms and emperors. And yet something else grew, a yearning for truth, for meaning, for a way to end suffering. In India, around 2,500 years ago, a man was born who would teach the world how to find peace. They called him the Buddha, the awakened one. Now, let's go back even further, to about 500 BCE, in the foothills of the Himalayas. Nestled in the lush green valleys, lived a wealthy prince named Siddhartha Gautama. His father, Suddhodana, was the ruler of a small kingdom. From birth, astrologers predicted that Siddhartha would become either a great king or renounce the world and seek spiritual enlightenment. Naturally, his parents shielded him from all suffering. Nothing could penetrate the walls of his palace, not the scorching sun nor the monsoon rains. No beggars, corpses, or old people entered its gates. Siddhartha grew up believing the world was a beautiful, blissful place. On his 29th birthday, Siddhartha's father gave him a magnificent white horse. Riding it around the palace walls, Siddhartha saw a sick man for the first time. Seeing this frail, emaciated figure stirred something inside him, a deep sense of unease. "What is that?" he asked his charioteer. "That," the charioteer replied, "is an old man." "People grow old, little prince. Even you will grow old." The idea of growing old terrified Siddhartha. To banish the thought, he returned to the palace, locked himself in his room, and refused to eat. When his wife and family entered, they were deeply concerned. "Why have you done this?" his mother asked. "Want to know what this is?" Siddhartha said, gesturing toward the old man. No, his father said. "Let us give gifts to the old man and let him leave the city." "You have no need to concern yourself with him." Siddhartha accepted his father's reassurance, but the next day, while driving around the city, he saw a different sight, a corpse being taken to the funeral ground. Startled again, he asked his charioteer what death was. "Death," the charioteer replied, "is inevitable. All life ends." That night, Siddhartha couldn't sleep. Images of sickness and death filled his mind. Again, he refused to eat. When his family entered, he asked them, "Why do people get sick and die?" "It's just the way things are," his father said, handing him a jeweled goblet. "Here, drink this sweet wine. It will help your troubled mind." But the wine brought forth another vision. Siddhartha saw a funeral procession, the body being lowered into the grave. That night, Siddhartha slipped out of the palace in disguise. He left behind his royal robes and donned the clothes of a beggar. Next, he shaved his head and grew a beard. Finally, he walked out of the city and toward the forest. Siddhartha had left the only home he had ever known. Now, completely alone, he wandered from place to place, living on berries and roots. Days turned into months. He studied with wandering holy men, learning their methods of meditation and reflection. Still, he found no answers. After 6 years, Siddhartha decided to return home. On the way, he sat down under a tree to rest. Suddenly, he had a vision of a great river with many tributaries flowing into it. Each tributary represented a holy man he had studied with. Yet the river itself seemed blocked by rocks and boulders. Then suddenly, one boulder broke free, and the river flowed smoothly once more. Siddhartha realized that he had been going about it all wrong, seeking enlightenment from others rather than finding his own path. So he vowed to meditate beneath that tree until he discovered the truth. Siddhartha spent 49 days in deep meditation. Hungry and thirsty, he rejected the offerings of passing monks. His body grew weak. Twice he contemplated giving up, but each time the memory of his vision spurred him on. Finally, just before dawn, enlightenment came. Siddhartha had discovered the 4 noble truths. First, life inevitably contains suffering. Second, suffering is born of desire. Third, it is possible to end suffering by ending desire. And fourth, the way to end desire is the Eightfold Path. This path consists of 8 practices: right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Following these 8 steps leads to nirvana, the transcendent state where suffering ceases. Now that he understood the nature of existence, Siddhartha had a choice to make. He could use his knowledge to gain power or share it with the world. He chose the latter. Gathering 5 former teachers, now fellow students, Siddhartha began to preach the Dharma. Their message spread throughout India and beyond. At first, few people followed him, but over time, millions embraced his teachings. One of his earliest converts was a young woman named Sujata. She had heard the Buddha speak on impermanence, the truth that everything changes. Deeply moved, she offered him milk from her coconut. That day, the Buddha taught his followers to live righteously and practice loving kindness toward all living beings. Siddhartha's teachings were revolutionary. Unlike Hinduism, which placed people into rigid castes at birth, Buddhism taught that any person, regardless of background, could reach enlightenment. Slaves and kings, men and women, all could follow the Eightfold Path and achieve nirvana. In time, Buddhism spread throughout South and Southeast Asia, China, Japan, Korea, and Tibet. Wherever it went, it carried messages of compassion, meditation, and peace. In the 3rd century BCE, a young Indian emperor named Ashoka the Great embraced Buddhism and became one of its greatest patrons. To spread the Dharma, he sent Buddhist monks across his empire and beyond. Traveling 1,500 miles to the Greek king Antiochus, Epulachus presented him with an elephant and 2 Buddhist monks. The Greeks had never seen an elephant before. Antiochus was so impressed that he converted to Buddhism, sending his own ambassadors to India to learn more. Meanwhile, Buddhist missionaries reached Sri Lanka, where King Devanampayatissa welcomed them and built the first great temple in honor of the Buddha. Soon, Buddhist monks arrived in China, having crossed the Himalayan mountains and sailed across the Yellow Sea to Korea. Korean King Chong-yu studied Buddhism and built temples for his new faith. Over the centuries, the Lotus Sutra became one of its core texts, containing the Buddha's teachings on impermanence and rebirth. Centuries later, a Chinese monk named Bodhidharma arrived in Korea. He brought with him a new form of meditation, known as Seon. It emphasized the direct experience of reality. This style of Buddhism was called Seon Buddhism and quickly became popular. The Seon monks traveled north into Japan and founded Zen Buddhism. It, too, emphasized meditation, simplicity, and direct experience. Eventually, Buddhism traveled to all corners of Asia. Thai monks walked barefoot through jungles, building simple huts along the way. Japanese monks scaled sheer cliffs, creating awe-inspiring temples high above the ground. Tibetan monks trekked over snow-covered passes, founding monasteries in remote mountain valleys. Wherever they went, they built monuments to the Buddha and taught people how to meditate and seek enlightenment. Today, hundreds of millions of people around the world call themselves Buddhist, following the teachings of the Awakened One, like ripples spreading across a pond. His words have echoed across millennia, carrying messages of compassion and the dream of peace. Ancient Greece, where the mighty Zeus once held court among mortals. And yet here, in this very place, something else was stirring. A revolution wasn't being waged with swords or shields, but with ideas. In the bustling streets of Athens, amidst the grandeur of its temples, a new kind of hero was emerging. Not a demigod, but a philosopher, one who dared to question everything. His name was Socrates. While the priests sang hymns to Zeus and Athena, Socrates roamed barefoot, challenging conventional wisdom. He engaged everyone from merchants to politicians, asking them to define concepts like justice and courage. To his question, "What is justice?" one man replied, "It's doing good and avoiding evil." Another said, "It's telling the truth." But Socrates found these answers wanting. He prodded them, turning their definitions inside out until they cracked. And when they did, he showed them the pieces didn't fit. His questioning enraged some, particularly those who thought they were wise. They saw themselves reflected in Socrates' mirror and hated what they saw. So they accused him of impiety, of corrupting the youth, and of denying the god's existence. These charges may seem absurd today, but then as now, progress demands sacrifice. And so it was that the great thinkers of antiquity paid their dues. Socrates' trial became a battle between blind tradition and curious inquiry. When the jury asked him to stop his disruptive questioning, he refused. He drank the hemlock, a plant extract used for capital punishment, with calm. And before taking the fatal draft, he made an astounding claim. He said that the unexamined life is not worth living. His execution sent shockwaves through Athens, but it also set in motion a chain of events that would change the course of human history. For Socrates had students, brilliant minds eager to carry on their master's work. Among them were 2 exceptional individuals, Plato and Aristotle. They more than anyone embodied the spirit of Socrates. Let us take a closer look at these men and how they took Socrates' teachings to new heights. Plato was a dreamer. While other students might have been intimidated by Socrates' relentless questioning, Plato saw it as a path to a higher truth. He wasn't satisfied with the tangible world. He wanted to know the why and wherefore of existence. He believed that reality was a reflection of a higher realm of perfect forms. Everything in our world is a mere shadow of these eternal truths. For instance, the beauty we see in a flower is a pale imitation of the real beauty, which exists only in the realm of forms. This idea is often represented through the famous allegory of the cave. Imagine a group of people chained in a cave who have never seen the outside world. All they can see are shadows projected on a wall in front of them. They believe these shadows to be real. One person escapes the cave and sees the outside world for the first time. At first, the light hurts their eyes, and the world seems harsh and unforgiving. But slowly they adjust and realize that the shadows in the cave were just copies of real objects outside. This is Plato's theory of forms. Our world is like the shadows in the cave, and the forms are the real world outside the cave. Plato explored these ideas in his most famous work, The Republic. It's a dialogue between Socrates and other characters discussing various topics such as justice, ideal government, and the nature of reality. In it, Socrates helps his interlocutors uncover the true nature of these concepts. For example, in Book 7, Socrates argues that the ideal government is one ruled by philosopher kings, who have a deep understanding of the nature of reality. He believes that these philosopher kings would be just and compassionate rulers who would lead their city towards harmony. But Plato wasn't just a philosopher. He was also a playwright. He wrote tragedies, satires, and comedies, and his work had a profound influence on later Greek literature. His plays often explored themes of love, loss, and the conflict between good and evil. One of his most famous plays is Oedipus Rex, the story of a man who unknowingly kills his father and marries his mother. It's a tragedy about fate and free will, about the consequences of our actions and the limits of human knowledge. Then there was Aristotle, Plato's student, who seemed destined to follow in his teacher's footsteps. However, unlike Plato, Aristotle was more concerned with the here and now. He wasn't satisfied with the shadows in the cave. He wanted to understand the world he lived in, the tangible world of rocks and trees and people. This led him to become one of the first scientists in history. Aristotle studied a wide range of subjects, from astronomy to zoology. He dissected animals to understand their internal organs and structures. He observed the stars and planets and developed a system for classifying them. He even studied rhetoric, the art of persuasive speaking and writing. But Aristotle wasn't just a scientist. He was also a philosopher and a thinker. He believed that happiness was the ultimate goal of human life, and that this happiness could be achieved through reason and moderation. He argued that humans were rational creatures, and that we should use our reason to understand the world around us, and to make decisions about how to live our lives. He also believed that we should strive for balance in all things, including our emotions and our relationships. But perhaps Aristotle's greatest contribution to philosophy was his development of logic. He believed that logic was the key to understanding the world and solving problems. He developed a system of syllogisms or arguments that consisted of two or more premises and a conclusion. This system allowed philosophers to reason more clearly and systematically, and it laid the foundation for modern logic. Aristotle's work had a profound impact on Western philosophy. His scientific method of observation, classification, and experimentation influenced the development of science for centuries. His ideas about happiness and moderation influenced the development of ethics. His work in logic laid the foundation for the field of philosophy. Both Plato and Aristotle built on Socrates' legacy, but they did so in different ways. Plato, the dreamer, retreated from the tangible world and created a world of his own in which he could explore the nature of reality and the ideal society. Aristotle, the pragmatist, delved into the complexities of the natural world, laying the foundations of science and exploring the intricacies of human happiness. They were as different as night and day, yet both were united by their devotion to their teacher and their shared love of wisdom. Their methods were different, but their goal was the same: to understand the world and our place in it. Both Plato and Aristotle created their own schools. Plato founded the Academy, which was the first institution of higher learning in the Western world, and Aristotle founded the Lyceum. These schools became centers of intellectual activity, attracting students and scholars from all over Greece. However, despite their similarities, Plato and Aristotle weren't always in agreement. They had different views on a number of topics, including the nature of reality, the role of the philosopher, and the ideal form of government. For example, Plato believed in the theory of forms, while Aristotle was more focused on the physical world. Plato was also more idealistic in his views on politics, arguing for a government ruled by philosopher kings, while Aristotle was more pragmatic, believing that the best government was one that was based on the practical needs of the people. Despite their differences, though, Plato and Aristotle remained friends and colleagues, and their intellectual relationship was one of the most important in the history of philosophy. You see, they exemplified the Socratic ideal, the pursuit of wisdom and understanding through questioning and dialogue. They showed that philosophy wasn't just a way of thinking, it was a way of life. Their ideas spread throughout the ancient world and beyond, influencing countless thinkers and shaping the course of human history. Their work laid the foundation for many of the ideas that we take for granted today, such as the importance of reason, the value of knowledge, and the power of critical thinking. And so we come to the end of this episode in our series, The Cradle of Knowledge. We've even traveled back in time to ancient Greece and followed the journey of ideas that sparked the flame of enlightenment. We've met the great thinkers of antiquity, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, and seen how they advanced human thought and understanding. But our journey doesn't end here. The story of human knowledge is vast and intricate, and we've only scratched the surface. There are countless other thinkers, discoveries, and innovations that have shaped our world. And we hope that this series has inspired you to learn more and explore the world on your own. As we conclude this episode, we want to leave you with a challenge. What will you do with the knowledge and understanding that you have gained? How will you use it to make the world a better place? We believe that education is the key to unlocking humanity's potential. We hope that this series has given you a taste of what's possible. When we open our minds and embrace curiosity, thank you for joining us on this journey through time. Until next time, keep asking questions, keep seeking answers, and above all, keep learning. Because as Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living. Did you know there's a place where Christianity began? No, not here, but here. And that's just one of the incredible things you can discover in today's episode. Judaism, long before empires, a nomadic people wandered deserts, carrying a covenant with their God. From the mountains of Armenia to the Nile River, from the plains of Babylon to the Mediterranean Sea, over thousands of years, they kept the memory of their heritage alive through stories passed down from generation to generation. Then around 1300 BCE, after centuries of wandering, the Hebrews settled in Canaan, a land of milk and honey flowing with the riches of the world. But it was also a land inhabited by others, the Canaanites, who lived among the Philistines, the Moabites, the Ammonites, and many more. Soon, the newcomers were absorbed into this larger society. Yet despite all the influences around them, the Hebrews resisted assimilation. Why? Because their God, Yahweh, was different. He was a single, invisible God who demanded justice, righteousness, and peace. Their scriptures tell us his name is written with 4 letters, YHWH, or Yahweh. This name, though, is too sacred for everyday use. So the Jews, the people of the Hebrew Bible, called him Adonai, meaning Lord, or Hashem, meaning the name. Some scholars believe that early Jews may have even spoken this name with an intonation, similar to the Tetragrammaton. The Jewish scriptures include the Torah, the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible. According to tradition, these were received by Moses on Mount Sinai, where God gave the 10 Commandments to his people. Together, the Torah and the rest of the Hebrew Bible are called the Tanakh, an acronym derived from the first letters of its 3 main divisions. The Torah, the Nevi'im, or prophets, and the Ketuvim, or writings. Within these texts, the Jews recorded laws for daily life, psalms to praise God, and prophecies about a coming Messiah who would liberate his people. These writings, in turn, profoundly influenced other faiths, including Christianity and Islam, which revered the Hebrew Bible as the Old Testament. In fact, some of the psalms, or poems of praise, are so well known they've become part of our common culture. Have you ever heard of King David, He's famous for playing the harp and writing many of the Psalms. One of his most well-known Psalms is Psalm 23, or the 23rd Psalm, which begins, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." Many people repeat these words for comfort when they face difficult situations. Other parts of the Jewish scriptures have had an equally profound impact. For example, the story of Ruth, a young woman who faithfully cared for her elderly mother-in-law, has inspired countless acts of kindness between generations. Or the account of Esther, who risked her life to save her people from annihilation, continues to inspire courage and resistance against tyranny. Throughout their history, the Jews kept these ancient texts alive by reciting them aloud. This practice helped preserve the texts, but it also ensured that the words would be remembered long after they were written. Even today, reciting the scriptures remains a central part of Jewish worship. One of the most influential books in the Torah is Deuteronomy. Its final chapter contains Moses' last speech, which includes one of the most famous passages in the Hebrew Bible. It's known as the Shema, which means "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." The Shema is considered the centerpiece of Jewish theology because it expresses the absolute oneness of God and serves as a constant reminder to put God first in everything they do. In fact, every Jew is obligated to recite the Shema twice a day as part of their daily prayer. But the Jewish scriptures didn't just shape the beliefs of the Jewish people, they also provided a framework for how to live. The Ten Commandments, for example, are still considered a model for ethical behavior by many cultures. As you can see, Judaism is rich with traditions that have stood the test of time. To learn more about its history, beliefs, and practices, be sure to visit our website. Until next time, thank you for watching. A long time ago, in a faraway land, Christianity began. In Roman Judea, a child was born in Bethlehem, Jesus of Nazareth. That name meant Son of Nazareth, a small town where he grew up. His father, Joseph, was a carpenter. His mother, Mary, a young virgin who had conceived by the power of the Holy Spirit. Jesus' birth was foretold by an angel, announced to shepherds keeping watch over their flocks, a message for all people: love God and love your neighbor. That was the essence of his teaching. Jesus traveled throughout Israel, healing the sick, calming the storm, raising the dead, preaching a radical message of love, of neighbor, forgiveness of enemies, hope for the poor. His followers, mostly Jewish, were called Christians. They heard his words, saw his deeds, witnessed his compassion, taught them to be kind, to turn the other cheek when struck, to give to the poor, to pray for those who persecute them, most of all, to love God with all their heart, soul, and mind. He spoke of a kingdom that was not of this world, a kingdom beyond Caesar's reach, a kingdom of justice, peace, and joy. He drew large crowds, but not everyone was impressed. Many of his own people rejected him. Religious leaders criticized him for healing on the Sabbath, for eating with sinners. Some rulers saw him as a threat, a claimant to the throne that David had lost, so they plotted to kill him. In the end, one of his disciples betrayed him, sold him to the high priests for 30 pieces of silver. Then he was arrested, tried, and condemned by both the Jewish and Roman authorities. On the cross, he suffered the death that was meant to break his followers. But they proclaimed he was risen from the dead. Carrying his gospel across Rome, among the first disciples was Peter, a fisherman, rough and ready, impulsive and strong. He had been a doubter, denying he knew Jesus just before the crucifixion. But after the resurrection, he became a leader of the church. Paul, once a persecutor of Christians, underwent a dramatic conversion on the road to Damascus. He had a vision of Jesus and became his apostle to the Gentiles, the non-Jews. He wrote of God's love for the world, sent his only Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. There were others, Silas and Lydia, Timothy and Titus, Priscilla and Aquila. There were also women, some of Jesus' most devoted followers. Mary Magdalene, who had witnessed the crucifixion, came to the empty tomb and heard the resurrected Jesus say, "Go tell my brothers I am rising from the dead." Other women, unnamed in the Bible, served as deacons, helping the poor and sick. What they all had in common was faith. They had seen Jesus, heard his words, felt his touch. Some had been healed by him. All believed he was the Messiah, the Son of God, the the savior of humanity. They didn't need to know everything about him. They needed only to believe in him. This new faith was dangerous. The Roman Emperor Nero persecuted Christians, blaming them for the fire that destroyed much of Rome. Early Christians suffered imprisonment, torture, and death, but their numbers kept growing. By the 3rd century, the Roman Emperor Constantine made Christianity legal. In the year 380, it was declared the official religion of the empire. But what does it mean to be a Christian, a follower of Christ? For the first Christians, it meant loving God with all their heart and loving their neighbors as themselves. It meant being part of a community, sharing what they had, caring for the sick and the poor, praying together and breaking bread, eating a simple meal that became known as communion or the Eucharist. For Christians, it was a sacred act, a reenactment of Jesus' Last Supper with his disciples. Each time they shared in it, they remembered his sacrifice and renewed their commitment to him. As Christianity spread throughout the Roman Empire, it took on new meanings for different people. But for all Christians, it has always meant a relationship with God, a personal Savior who died for humanity's sins, so that all who believe in him might have everlasting life. 6 centuries later, in the sands of Arabia, another prophet arose, Muhammad. Lone in the cave of Hira, he heard the voice of Gabriel recite. It thus began the Quran, revelations of one God, merciful and just. Preached against idols, injustice, tribal feuds. At first opposed, he fled from Mecca to Medina, the Hijra marking the birth of Islam. Within decades, his followers united Arabia. Within a century, Islam stretched from Spain to India. Its creed was simple: there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. Its law Sharia-shaped courts, trade daily life. Its scholars preserved and expanded science, philosophy, medicine, astronomy, carrying the torch of knowledge when Europe sank into darkness. He was born in Mecca around 570 CE, an orphan at the age of 40, a prophet at 42, Muhammad, meaning praised be he, became the central figure of Islam. Raised as a Muslim, I've always known there's only one God. But it took me moving to a different country to realize just how unique this concept is. For much of human history, people have believed in many gods, or followed no God at all. But in the Arabian Peninsula of the 6th century, a man named Muhammad turned that around. He declared that there is only one God, a merciful and just God who revealed his word to him, the same God who had chosen Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who had spoken through Moses and Jesus, the same God who will judge all people. This is the testimony of faith, the Shahada. And with this, Muhammad founded the religion of Islam. Muslims believe the Quran to be the literal word of God. So let's take a closer look at these revelations. They came to Muhammad over the course of 23 years. At first in written form, the words were etched onto stones, then on leaves and animal skins. Finally, they were compiled into one book after the Prophet's death. The Quran is divided into 114 chapters, each with its own message. It addresses all aspects of life. Verses guide the faithful on everything from prayer to charity to business dealings. Some verses are brief, some are long. Each has a deeper meaning that Muslims seek to uncover. It's not just a holy book. It's a source of law, a source of wisdom, and for Muslims, a source of life. But the Quran isn't the only pillar of Islam. There's also the 5 daily prayers, which call to worship God at fixed times throughout the day. There's fasting during the month of Ramadan, a time for spiritual reflection and growth. There's the pilgrimage to Mecca, a journey every able-bodied Muslim must make at least once in their life. And finally, there's the concept of jihad, often misunderstood as holy war, but actually meaning struggle or striving to live a life of peace and righteousness. These are the pillars that hold up the structure of Islam. They provide guidance, they foster community, and they connect Muslims to each other and to their Creator. The Quran teaches that God chose Muhammad to be his final prophet, bringing to a close the chain of prophets that began with Adam and continued through Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and others. Muhammad is revered as the seal of the prophets, the last and final messenger of God. When he proclaimed his prophethood, the leaders of Mecca rejected him. They feared losing their power and influence. So Muhammad left the city, a journey known as the Hijra, which Muslims believe to be the beginning of the current era. It's from this point that the Muslim calendar is dated. In Medina, Muhammad continued to preach and perform miracles. He led the Muslims in prayer, defended them in battle, and established the foundations of Islamic society. It was here that he received the first revelation of the Quran. Within 2 generations, Islam spread throughout the Arabian Peninsula. From this small peninsula, Islam spread like wildfire. By the 7th century, Muslims controlled the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. By the 8th century, they had conquered vast territories from Spain to Central Asia. As the Muslim world grew, so did its influence. Muslim scholars translated ancient Greek texts into Arabic, preserving them for future generations. They made significant contributions to mathematics, astronomy, and medicine. Muslim art and architecture flourished, with mosques and palaces showcasing intricate designs and geometric patterns. During a time when Europe was mired in the Dark Ages, the Muslim world was a beacon of intellectual and cultural advancement. But like any religion, Islam is not without its challenges. Over the centuries, different schools of thought and practice have emerged, sometimes leading to divisions and conflicts. Still, the core teachings of the Quran remain a source of unity and strength for Muslims around the world. Today, Islam is the second largest religion in the world with over 1.8 billion followers. It's a testament to the power of its message that even after 14 centuries, it continues to inspire and unite people across cultures and continents. If you're interested in learning more about Islam, please visit our website. Thank you for watching. We humans are storytellers. Our species survives on stories. The hero who slays the dragon and wins the princess, that's a story. But it is also a metaphor for life, a lesson about how to live. For who among us has not slain dragons? Among us has not been saved by love. Or as the Greeks would say, agape. That's the highest form of love. Agape. It means unconditional love. Love without expectation of anything in return. A concept so radical that it literally turned the world upside down. From the banks of the Yellow River to the streets of Athens, from the Ganges plain to the deserts of Arabia, humankind had discovered more than tools or cities. We had discovered meaning. Confucius gave us duty. Laozi gave us harmony. Hanfizi gave us law. Buddha gave us compassion. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle gave us reason. Jesus gave us love. Muhammad gave us unity. Each voice was different, yet all sought the same light, to guide mankind through the chaos of existence. Together, they forged the soul of civilization. Yet today, we are unmoored. The very notion of objective truth is under siege. And if we cannot agree on what is true, then we cannot hope to agree on what is good, or beautiful, or right. Postmodernism has stripped away the scaffolding of meaning that has sustained us for millennia. Nihilism follows close behind. If there is no objective truth, then there is no right way to live, only the way that suits you. But that's selfish. What about the common good? What about duty to others, to our community? We are all in this together. This is not a game. We're playing for keeps. In the absence of an agreed-upon standard of right and wrong, we invent our own gods, and we wage war in their name. We sacrifice at the altar of Mammon, worshipping the golden calf, while the prophets cry out in the wilderness. We have strayed far from the path of our ancestors. But here's the thing. I believe that deep down, we all yearn for meaning. Deep down, we all yearn for love. We just need a little help remembering that. Enter the hero. The hero who slays the dragon and wins the princess. We know this story because it's in our DNA. The hero represents the best of humanity. Courageous, selfless, compassionate, honest, the embodiment of the light that Plato said shines in all of us. The dragon, obviously, is an obstacle to the hero's journey, an impediment to the common good. Sometimes the dragon is within us, a manifestation of our own selfishness and fear. The princess is not just a damsel in distress, but a symbol of something higher. Something worth sacrificing for, something worth living for. In Jungian terms, she is the anima mundi, the archetype of the divine feminine, which Carl Jung believed resided in all of us. The princess represents our deepest aspirations, our yearning for a better world, a world made whole by love. When the hero slays the dragon and wins the princess, he does not do it for himself. He does it for the community. He does it for all of us. His reward is not the princess, but the transformation wrought upon the world by his actions. This is why we tell this story over and over again, because when we hear it, we remember who we are, what we are capable of, and we find strength in that remembrance. Socrates once said that the unexamined life is not worth living. We can add to that. The unexamined hero is not worth knowing. You must examine your life, your actions, your thoughts. You must be your own hero. You must slay the dragons that impede you and all those around you. And in doing so, you will find love, not the kind that is born of lust or infatuation, but agape, the kind of love that makes the world go round. So I say to you tonight, be the hero.
Act B.
Be the hero of your own story. Love one another as yourself. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Only then will we make the world a better place. Only then will we make civilization great again. The great empires built roads and walls and temples and armies. But stones crumble, palaces fall, dynasties fade. What endures are the ideas, the invisible architectures of the human heart. Philosophy and religion, faith and thought, these are the true monuments of mankind. They gave us purpose beyond survival, dignity beyond hunger, hope beyond death. So, let's finish our story of humanity with a thought experiment. Imagine it's 10,000 years from now. Our species has long since gone interstellar. Humanity is a collection of thriving colonies on distant planets and in alien star systems. Most of the solar system has been terraformed to support life. The Earth is nothing but a radioactive wasteland, a dead husk of its former self. But before leaving this pale blue dot, we uploaded a copy of ourselves into the cloud. And now 10,000 years later, some intrepid explorer has found this archive and is going through it, discovering our history for the first time. What would they learn about us? What would they find most remarkable? Would they marvel at our technology, our weapons, our spaceships? I think not, because all of those things are either useless or dangerous now. No one lives here anymore. Would they pore over our social media posts and streaming videos and websites? Maybe for a while, but eventually even those will become obsolete. Data degrades, hard drives crash. Even the digital stuff we create isn't immortal. But there is one thing, and one thing only, that will survive from our time on this planet, and that's the ideas we leave behind. Everything else is gone, but ideas have a way of surviving even planetary annihilation. Ideas like democracy and communism, capitalism and socialism, feminism and pacifism,
Existentialism.
and Marxism, Stoicism, and nihilism. All of these have adherents and detractors even now. Every single one of them was born here on this planet. And all of them have something to teach us. That's what we're going to do in part 3 of Crash Course Philosophy. We're going to look at some of the great ideas that have survived the sands of time and see how they can help us get through the inevitable challenges we all face in life. So join me starting October for the final 6 episodes of Crash Course Philosophy, where we explore what separates us from the other animals. That's right, our big brains, our opposable thumbs, our tendency to blurt out the first thing that comes to our minds, and of course, our capacity for love, empathy, and reason. We ask what it means to be human. What is consciousness, and how does the brain create the self? What is morality, and what does it mean to live a good life? What is the relationship between mind and matter, between body and soul? We examine the arguments of the great thinkers who grappled with these same questions, the same questions you grapple with every day. Join us and find out what they discovered. Because at the end of the day, it's not the size of your brain or the shape of your skull that makes you human. It's what you do with it. Great empires build roads and walls and temples and armies. But stones crumble, palaces fall, dynasties fade. What endures are the ideas, the invisible architectures of the human heart. Philosophy and religion, faith and thought. These are the true monuments of mankind. They gave us purpose beyond survival, dignity beyond hunger, hope beyond death. And in the end, it's the only one of those that truly matters, because everything else is gone. But ideas have a way of surviving, even planetary annihilation. We may have failed to build a better world, but maybe by grappling with these questions, we can at least build a better us. I'll see you in October. If you'd like more philosophy in your life, you can subscribe to our channel. And if you'd like to support Crash Course, you can join our community on a crowdfunding platform. Here at the edge of the known world, where the great rivers meet the distant sun, we have witnessed the dawn of wisdom. We have seen the birth of religions that shape the soul of mankind. We have watched philosophies rise and fall like the tides upon the shore. But the story does not end here. For beyond the horizon lies an age of fire and steel, an age in which empires collide and civilizations are reborn. The deserts will blaze with holy wars, the steppes will thunder with the sound of hooves, and Europe will crawl through darkness before daring to dream of light once more. This is the saga of the medieval world, the clash of civilizations, the forging of faith, and the storm that would shape the destiny of all humanity. From the ruins of Rome to the rise of Islam, we have chronicled the birth of a new era. Now witness the fires of faith ignite the medieval world, forging a new destiny, a D61000. As the Western Roman Empire crumbled into the dust of history, two titans rose to fill its void: the Eastern Roman or Byzantine Empire and the rising power of Islam. The Byzantines, heirs to the glories of Rome, held the western provinces of the once vast empire together with a steadfast hand. Meanwhile, Islam spread like wildfire across the deserts and oases of the Middle East, North Africa, and the Iberian Peninsula. As these two titans clashed along the Mediterranean shores, a third power stirred in the east, the kingdom of the Franks under the reign of the legendary Clovis. United by their common faith in the one true God, the Franks would go on to forge a powerful kingdom that would serve as the bedrock of Western Europe for centuries to come. Holy wars and shifting sands. In the deserts of Arabia, a new fervor burns. The Rashidun Caliphate, the first major Islamic empire, ignited a holy war against the Persians. Soon, the armies of Islam swept across the Middle East, seizing control of the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. This victory marked a turning point in history, establishing Islam as a major world religion. However, as the caliphate fractured into rival factions, the Western Islamic states faced a new threat: the fierce Viking raiders from the north. To protect their lands, the Spanish Muslims built a formidable defense system known as the de la Mancha, a testament to their determination to resist the onslaught. Meanwhile, the Byzantine Empire found itself under siege from another quarter, the Slavic tribes to their north. Despite these external threats, the Byzantines made significant strides in art, literature, and architecture, leaving behind masterpieces like the Hagia Sophia, a marvel of the ancient world. The Mongol conquests and the birth of Moscow. In the vast plains of Central Asia, a nomadic tribe known as the Mongols united under the banner of Genghis Khan, creating a fearsome empire that would stretch from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe. The Mongols were a force of nature, known for their military prowess and adaptability. They employed psychological warfare, siege tactics, and even biological weapons to subdue their enemies. One notable victim was the Khwarezmians, a Central Asian state that resisted Mongol rule. Genghis Khan, a scorched earth campaign against them resulted in a devastating loss of life and the destruction of cities like Bukhara and Samarkand. Yet amidst this turmoil, a small Russian principality known as Moscow emerged as a beacon of hope, playing a crucial role in thwarting the Mongol advance into Europe. This pivotal moment would lay the foundation for Russia's emergence as a major power in the centuries to come. The Russian, Byzantine, and Western European societies were on the brink of a profound transformation that would shape the medieval world as we know it. And now you can be part of this epic journey through time. Click the link above to subscribe and join us in exploring the uncharted territories of the medieval world. Together, let's uncover the mysteries of a bygone era and witness the birth of a legend. Don't forget to hit the bell icon to never miss an exciting episode. The adventure awaits. Are you ready to embark on this epic journey?